Welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast. For anyone who wants to build and grow a career in IT, develop and improve your strengths and skills, be inspired and motivated by the successes of others, manage your career progression, and achieve your IT career goals. And now, your host, Phil Burgess.
Welcome to episode 201 of the IT Career Energizer podcast. My guest on today's show is an independent consultant specialising in identity and access control. He helps companies around the world to design and implement authentication and authorization for their distributed web and native applications. He is also co-creator of Identity Server and the author of a couple of books. So welcome to the IT Career Energizer podcast, Dominick Baier.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So Dominick, could you perhaps give us a little bit more insight into what you do? That was pretty much a brief intro, but it'd be good to understand what you do in terms of identity and authentication.
Yes, so I really hate those long bios.
Yes.
So I shortened it quite a bit from what I had before. I often say I have the luxury of doing security full time, and not everybody agrees on the word luxury here. But basically, that's what I do. For the last 15 years, I've been specializing on application security, if you like, because security is a huge field these days. And when I started doing security, there was network security basically, but now we have all these various types of security, like application security, and if I tell my neighbor I'm doing security, he thinks of virus scanners probably. So I specialize in application security really, and even more specializing in that area is basically authentication and authorization, which sounds really like a niche topic, but it's huge. I can tell you, it's huge. Everybody needs that. And in other words, I basically help companies build, when my wife asks me what I'm doing, I basically tell her that I help them build a login page. Yeah. And in essence, that's what most people should see and nothing more, because a good security system is mostly invisible. Yeah. So I help companies building their authentication infrastructure, like their identity management systems. Yeah. So basically figuring out who is the user. That sounds simple, but it isn't. And then obviously after you know who that user is, then the next question would be, and what is he allowed to do? And that's what I basically help companies building. And, especially in this, what people call modern application architectures, which is basically a mixture of front ends, back ends for back ends, and mobile web and server side applications.
Right. For you, does that cover sort of the various layers of the application or the architecture? So you start at basically the front end for a customer experience, for example, but also the authentication that goes right through the layers of the architecture?
No, to be honest, I really only know about authentication and authorization. That's all I focus on. I mean, obviously, for building a modern application, there are many, many more things involved. Yeah. But what I help them with is integrate, first of all, building the authentication system, which is these days, basically what we call a claims-based identity system based on, token-based authentication, using typical protocols like OpenID Connect and OAuth. And Identity Server, which you mentioned in the intro, is an open source project that we started working on like over 10 years ago, which basically is the de facto standard in the .NET space, at least, for building these types of servers. Okay, and that's what we typically start with. And then once you have this up and running, it's all about now how do you integrate all your clients with this, your native clients, your desktop clients, your mobile clients, your JavaScript clients, your web applications, and so on.
So Dominick, can you perhaps share with us a career tip that the audience may not know and perhaps should?
So I should prefix everything I'm saying with that I am probably really not the right person to give anyone career tips.
I think everybody can say that.
Because I was just lucky. Yeah. I made the decision at one point in my life that I don't want to be employed. To be honest, I actually was only employed 3 years of my life. For the rest of my life, I was always working on my own, basically, as an independent contractor, consultant, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So all I'm saying, in this podcast is purely from my perspective, how I think it worked out for me. Yeah. So first of all, and even that sounds like a cliche, but first of all, find something that you are ready to do for the rest of your life, which for me was security. Yeah, I mean, before I did security, I did, like the whole full stack nonsense. Yeah, I did a bit of front end development, a bit of database development, a bit of everything, but I never enjoyed that. I never wanted the broad knowledge. I wanted the deep knowledge. So whenever I hear this term full stack developer, I have to cringe a little bit because I think that's exactly what you shouldn't be. But that's a different discussion, I guess. But since I found this one thing that still keeps me interested after doing it now for 20 years, probably the most important career advice I can give to someone that is in a similar situation than me is produce as much free and open content as you can. For me, that was blogging to start with. Yeah, especially when you are on your own and independent, you want to increase your visibility, right? So people should know about you. Otherwise, no one will hire you. So, I created, I wrote a lot of blog posts, long blog posts, short ones, a lot of them. Yeah. I did a lot of conference talks. I did write some books, even if that is something I wouldn't recommend. And the whole open source work started basically as the natural, expansion from blogging. Right? At some point, my blog posts contained so much code that it didn't really make sense to turn it into HTML anymore. So basically, I created open source projects at that point, I wouldn't have called them open source. I created source code that you can look at that goes along with my blogging. And by the time, that there wasn't that many options. So my first source code lived on Codeflex, for example, yeah. But long story short, I guess, is the reason I'm here and are still busy with the one thing that I like to do is because I worked a lot on my visibility over the years. And so coming back to your question, the one career tip is produce content. Content is king.
So it's about really for you building a personal brand so that you're known for what you do and who you are?
The point is, at 20 years ago, that wasn't my intention. I just did what I loved to do. And as part of that, I was into researching technology and writing about it. That was something I really enjoyed. But looking back at it, obviously, since you need some sort of business plan in your life, I guess, yeah, then you're right. It's basically working on your own brand.
And Dominick, can you share with us your worst IT career moment and what you learned from that experience?
So I thought about this question briefly, and I don't have anything spectacular. I think, especially when you're working as a consultant, again, some people like to stay with one company for a very long time because they want to, do the whole project from A to Z. In my space, I'm typically brought in more for very specific problems. So I get to see a lot of different companies. The thing that frustrates me the most is when you spend a lot of time there working with good people, motivating them, building something, and then it just all doesn't happen because of some unrelated corporate politics. That's probably my most frustrating moments, yeah.
And in terms of what you learned from that, do you try and avoid those situations now?
No, I can't, right? I mean, I'm brought in for a purpose. Someone thinks that's useful, and I help them achieve what they want to achieve. if someone else in the same company who is more powerful than the other person decides that it is not as useful as they think it is, there's nothing I can do about it, right? And you don't know up front. And to be honest, this doesn't happen that often. Yeah, I mean, most projects are really, really successful in the sense of that, I can be helpful to them. But, every now and then you end up in this situation where it's not the technology, it's not the work that you delivered, it's something completely unrelated, something, something enterprisey that came in the way.
So you have to accept that those things may happen, and therefore you need to be able to understand how to deal with them.
Yes, of course. And especially if you're a contractor or whatever, as long as they pay you, I guess it's not the end of the world.
Yes, exactly. Okay, and Dominic, can you tell us about your career highlight or greatest success?
Probably that's the opposite of what I just said, yeah?
Yep.
Well, I mean, probably my greatest success, I guess, in the grand scheme is that over 10 years ago, I started an open source project by the name of Starter STS. So that was the very first name of Identity Server, Starter STS, which was basically a collection of 7 or 8 files. And this thing is now the de facto standard if you're doing token-based services in the .NET space, and actually is recognized by the industry as a whole as being the de facto standard, as much as Microsoft is shipping it now as part of the ASP.NET Core 3 release. Yeah.
Yep.
So yes, if you want, some success story, I guess that's the one. Yeah. I worked really hard for Identity Server. Proc and me, it is something that is very, very useful to many, many people, and that is probably the best part of it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, it's the fact that it's out there and being used by so many other people and people are getting benefit from it. That's a great achievement, definitely. So, Dominic, what excites you about the future of the industry and careers in IT?
To be honest, not that much.
Okay.
I'm getting old. I have a lot of gray hair to prove that I have spent a lot of, Proc is the guy I work with. So we are basically, a two-man team working on, the core team of Identity Server. And we've been working together now for 15 years. Yeah. And, we often discuss this. Yeah. Like a new version of a framework comes out. Yeah. It's all like Groundhog Day, right? Someone writes something new, you start learning it, you analyze it, you make it work for you until the next version, right? and that's how the industry as a whole keeps itself alive. Yeah, new version, new people that need to understand it. You do a training course on it. You use it until the next version comes, and it's kind of like predictable at this point. Yeah. Still, I think that compared to the technology we had 10 or 15 years ago when I started doing this authentication work, it's getting better and better. And that's kind of exciting. Yeah? I also spend a lot of time in the protocol space. Yeah? Again, something that most people don't think could be enjoyable at all, like reading specifications, reading RFCs and so on, and working on that and giving feedback and seeing how in the future certain problems can be solved in a more straightforward way or in a more standardized way, or just enjoying how a community gets together and analyzes a problem and turns it into some guidance is exciting. But from a compared to 15 years ago, where I was really excited when .NET 2.0 came out, right? And I started, decompiling it and recompiling and stepping through the source code just to be able to see how it works. These times, I think, at least for me, are over because I witnessed a lot of framework versions and just technology waves in general. Yeah. I mean, again, it's still the one thing that keeps me sometimes even up at night, and it still excites me. And I'm still happy that I found this place for me, this place in the technology stack that still keeps me interested and excited, I guess. So.
Right. Okay. Fine. We're going to go into the reveal round now. We're going to find out a little bit more about you and the way you think. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
So what first attracted you to a career in IT?
Actually, my father was a software developer. So when I grew up with computers, basically. He was, like that's like in the 80s, I guess. So, where other people had their Atari or Amiga or C64, my first computer was an IBM PC.
Right.
And it was kind of, again, same thing. Yeah. My friends didn't quite understand why this is exciting. It's a white box with a green screen.
Yes.
And at most, you could draw some, ASCII characters that move around. I was strangely attracted to that. I actually had a Commodore 64 later, but my very first computer was an IBM PC, and I think what always fascinated me the most is like networked computers where you send a command on one machine and on another machine something happens. Now that was exciting for me. So that's and my first job in IT was when I was 12. I started assembling computers. Yeah, like I put RAM chips on motherboards, and at some point I got over the phase where I just wanted to use a computer to a phase where I wanted to program a computer, and that's where it all started. Yeah.
And Dominic, what's the best career advice you've ever received?
I think I never got good career advice. I think we have another question, right? What's the worst career advice? Yeah, so I'll
That's the next one. Yeah. Do you want to answer that?
Well, I mean, they go together, I guess. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I was employed for 3 or 4 years. Yeah, and this was a really, really, really a life-changing time for me because basically when I came from college or from university, I couldn't find a job as a developer that interested me, so I joined a security company, basically a startup. I was employee number 3, and they were all like hardcore networking guys, and the only thing they couldn't do was write a code. Yeah, so they need someone who can automate stuff. So that's something I did. And my boss at the time, really, really, really good guy, very intelligent, very successful, basically had this ability to have a very, very, very broad knowledge. So he was very quick at learning new stuff, just up to the point where he knows enough to solve the problem, kind of. Yeah. And his advice was always learn as many different things you can. Do that. Yeah. And I never really liked it. Yeah. I said that in the beginning. My mental model is not, I want to learn many different things. I want to learn a couple of things, but very, very thorough. Okay. So for me, that was the worst career advice because that's just not how I work. Okay. And the best career advice I gave myself, I guess, by quitting the job and just focusing by the time on .NET, basically .NET-based application security, which is the Kickstarter of my career.
Dominic, if you were to begin your IT career again in today's world, what would you do?
Well, given that I am me, I guess I would do exactly the same thing again. Yeah? Pick the thing that is really, really interesting to you and specialize on it. Let the world know that you are the specialist for it and be it.
And Dominic, what career objectives are you currently focusing on?
For the last 10 years or so, we've pretty much have been living the open source plus services lifestyle, right? So we had this open source project and sold services around that, yeah, like consulting, development, and so on and so forth. This is nice, but also, after a long time, a bit tiresome. So actually, Brock and I and another person called Michelle, we just started a product company. So we actually created a real commercial product, which people can buy, and which is a completely different thing than creating a developer-oriented tool. So getting good at this at building something that I can give people and they can install it on their own and can troubleshoot it on their own and it works for them. That's what I want to get better with. And that's my current main focus.
Okay. And what's the number one non-technical skill that has helped you in your career so far?
I wish I would have more social skills, I guess. I get better at that, but the reality is that for the besides these 4 years of my life where I was employed, I always worked on my own. So I'm not really good at leading teams, for example. Things that you learn when you work in a company for a long time, yeah, like the whole team player things. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, the last 10 years, since I was working just with this one person, which we optimized to make it work for us. Sometimes I wish I would be better in these soft skills, I guess. But maybe there's also a reason I chose this way of working for my life. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I still hope I can talk to people in a way that they understand me. The feedback I get from customers is that I'm good at explaining complicated things. Maybe that's a non-technical skill that helps me a lot. Yeah. I was working for a training company for a couple of years called Develop Mentor, pretty popular company back in the days, and they struggled a lot with finding people that can at the same time be very technical, but also have the ability to explain it to people who are new to the technology. And I think this is a very, very important skill.
Yes. And Dominic, what do you do to keep your own career energized?
Holidays.
Yes.
As many as I can.
Yeah.
I do a lot of breaks. I have an old Land Rover Defender remodeled to a camper van. I take that out a lot just to get away from the computer. Even sometimes, to be honest, to actually do some work outside the office, just somewhere in the forest or something. That works for me. And I think the other nice thing is because I work with Brock almost every day, is because he lives in the States. Yeah, he's based in Boston. So he comes online at 3:00 my time. So typically in the morning, I do my stuff. Then we get together at 3:00 for 2-3 hours to do some pairing on, typically identity server or policy server. And then I'm done and he does his stuff. Yeah, I think that worked pretty well for me to divide my day into two halves, basically, where I work on my own and then we work on the shared stuff. That keeps me kind of fresh.
Yeah. Okay, the next question really goes hand in hand with the last one. So what do you do in your spare time away from technology?
People who follow me on Twitter, I guess they know that I like a lot camping, barbecue, beer, and whiskey.
Yes.
And these are the things that I share publicly. And then obviously there's also a lot of family activities that I don't share publicly. Yeah. But yeah, I like the great outdoors.
And Dominic, can you share a parting piece of career advice with the IT Career Energizer audience?
Normally, when I come to companies, yeah, I tell them, yeah, that I'm doing this, that I have this luxury of doing that full time. Because normally, when you go to a company to help them with security, what I typically encounter is that there are developers who typically do other things. They do front-end development, they do database development, they do whatever. And suddenly, they have to become experts in security for, let's say, 2 months. And then they are basically doing something else. Okay? So what I typically tell these guys as a career move is specialize on security. The good thing about security is the competition is not very, very big. Because everybody likes security. But actually, most people don't. They think it's boring. They're maybe scared as well. Especially if you like that work, if you think protocols are fascinating and these are really interesting problems, specialize on it. You'll become a very, very valuable resource in your company. That's my advice I give to everyone, yeah?
Okay. And finally, Dominic, what's the best way we can find out more about you and connect with you?
Well, these days, my public outlet, if you like, is pretty much Twitter. Yeah, so it's at least privilege on Twitter. I don't blog as much anymore these days because, well, I probably would have the time, but since I'm working either on identity server, and that is kind of in the open anyways because it's open source, or I'm working on the closed source product that I'm not talking about too much because it's more like a commercial thing, is basically means I'm not blogging that much anymore these days, but I'm on Twitter. People can find me there. I'm on GitHub, right? So that's where I probably spend most of my time each day on the GitHub website. So yeah, if you want to interact with me as a person, Twitter. If you want to interact with me because of some code, that's probably GitHub, yeah.
Dominick, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you.
A quick thank you again to my guest on today's show for sharing their career tips, advice and experiences. You'll find a show notes page for today's episode on the IT Career Energizer website, which will be itcareerenergizer.com/e and then the number of today's episode. Now that there are 3 new episodes of the show every week, make sure that you're subscribed to the show so you don't miss out. And don't forget to join the new IT Career Energizer community group in Facebook. If you're enjoying the podcast, it would be great to hear from you and to learn about your own career journey, your successes, opinions, and thoughts on the future of the industry. Thanks for supporting the show, and remember, if you're not growing your career, you're slowing your career.
Thanks for listening to the IT Career Energizer podcast. To find out more about building a successful career in IT, visit itcareerenergizer.com.